a few more minutes while we have folks joining the webinar now on all of our channels. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. We have a lot of different geographies joining us this morning, actually even our presenters here today. So I'm just going to give it a few seconds as people come on. I'm excited about this morning because we're actually, for the first time, streaming on all of our social channels. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're not only wherever you are in the world, but whatever channel you're joining us from. So we're excited about that. I'm going to give it one more minute, and then I'm going to get started here with quick introductions. Some other people just joining in the background. Okay, so while people are coming on board now, I'm going to just do a quick introduction. Thank you again to everybody who is joining us today, no matter where you are. We're excited to be hosting this webinar with NetApp this morning or this afternoon. This is live streaming on all of our channels today. We will also have a replay available afterwards if you missed the live session. We are taking questions at the end, and we're going to do that on the Zoom channel. So if you are logged into Zoom, you can ask a question through a Q&A, or you can chat me through the buttons on the bottom. Aaron is going to try to monitor some of our other channels, and put in any pressing questions. We will get back to you. If your question isn't asked, we'll come back to you with more detail. So now let me just take a quick minute and introduce the people who are with us today. So from NetApp, we have Eric Tornwall. I'm really excited that Eric is with us today. He's going to help us think about ONTAP in AWS. And thank you, Eric, for joining us. We also have Mark Greenlaw, who is joining us from London. So thank you, Mark. He's our head of market strategy. So with that, I'm now going to turn it over to Eric, and then we'll take questions at the end. Thanks, Eric.
Great. Thank you, Jocelyn. I think you can hear me okay?
We can.
Perfect. So let's get our deck rolling up here briefly and make sure we're sharing and it looks good on your side. How's that look? Is that looking okay?
That's great. We can see the kind of the side.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go into presenter view now.
Perfect. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, everyone who's joined. Really excited to share a little bit of data about NetApp and ONTAP and how we work together in partnership with Cirrus, which I think has tremendous business value. And that's what we want to talk a little bit about this morning. So my name is Eric Tornwall. I look after our AWS specialist organization in the commercial sector at NetApp for North America and Canada. Good day to everybody that's out there. I'm glad we've got folks that are coming and joining us from all different geographies. So what I want to cover today really is just a little bit about the history and partnership between NetApp and AWS, talk a little bit about the value of what we call data on tap, which is our core operating system, what that brings, and then also talk a little bit about what's available today in AWS from a NetApp standpoint. What's interesting is we're seeing customers that may have actually a very limited amount of familiarity with NetApp really seeking two types of consumption. Really, they may today be heavily on-prem invested and have a desire to maintain what we would consider to be table stakes enterprise storage features. We also see a customer base that has a very born in the cloud type business model who's now seeking some of the enterprise storage capabilities that are found in solutions like ONTAP. And it's interesting to see that development and kind of that journey that folks are on and all the things that they now require as their business gets bigger and successful. So just taking a step back, I wanted to put a little bit of perspective. So NetApp has been around for roughly 30 years. We're focused on data management. We talk about data management in what we call data fabric, which is really a common set of tools and a common set of capabilities and a common set of skill set that can help customers manage data from on-prem into hybrid cloud, into the public cloud, into the hyperscale cloud space. So wherever your data sits or wherever your data manipulations or things that you're trying to do with your data, wherever you're trying to execute that, we can cover you in all of those environments with a common set of tools and a common set of staff. And that really drives a lot of efficiency. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what's available today in just a second. You'll notice on the top right, there's a box that says FSx for NetApp ONTAP. That is a first-party service. It's one of the only fully featured ONTAP services available in the hyperscale cloud space. We'll talk about why that's important. No matter if you're using ONTAP on-prem today or you're using another enterprise storage solution, you'll see a lot of commonality and a lot of advantage in using that service. So we'll talk a bit more about that in a second, but let me just take a step back and just talk a little bit about the common feature set across all of our storage platforms, right? So I think the big thing that stands out here is we're able to support multiple protocols for file. We're able to support multiple protocols for block storage, and that's what we're going to focus on a bit today. And we also have the ability to manage object storage as a part of ONTAP as well. So right size, right place, right performance is really kind of what we're after here. In the cloud side, what's really unique in the ONTAP offering, the FSx for NetApp ONTAP offering, is the ability that we have a multi-protocol feature set. So we're able to support not only SMB and NFS for file, but also iSCSI for block. That is a unique offering in the AWS storage portfolio, being able to support all of those types of connectivity options and protocol options. So the nice thing though is if you're used to managing on-prem with block storage today, you can do the same thing in the cloud. And that's a lot of what Cirrus brings us, is the ability to move data seamlessly from on-prem into the cloud or from other AWS services into the FSx service. So let me just talk about some of the table stakes features though, right? So we can think about this two ways. And I talk about storage efficiency. A lot of times we're talking about not making copies of things in duplication, not saving the same segment of data multiple times, not having blocks of data that are only partially filled, right? These are all ways to reduce the storage footprint itself, which is really relevant, right? I mean, there can be a lot of waste when you have storage that doesn't have some of these features. And I'm kind of hit on all of them in a second here specifically, but what's really even more powerful is the ability for some of these things to drastically improve staff productivity. And we're going to talk about some examples here in a moment, but the ability to make instantaneous flex clones, for example, in the top center box, that's the ability to take a data set and make a completely rewritable copy of that data without actually duplicating any information that's not unique. So not only does it not take up a lot of space on the service, but you can also do it almost instantly. And that's a big delta for a lot of customers that are trying to do test runs and test and development and things along the lines of databases, right? Where it might take hours to do it on a non-flex clone type system like ONTAP, where these clones now are created in seconds. It allows much, much better productivity across the board. So our snapshot technology is a big piece of our equation, the ability to make those snapshots rewritable without any storage penalty, and then the ability really to make everything efficient, right? So when you provision capacity, we don't actually consume it until you write data to it. We make sure that the data is compressed. We don't write zeros, as an example. We have something called deduplication, which allows us to take common data segments and only store them one time and reference back to it, which really reduces the storage footprint. And I know Cirrus is probably going to cover a couple examples of where that was really powerful in some specific customer use cases. So all of these things are really what I would consider to be the table stakes enterprise storage features that folks have utilized on-prem, now available in the cloud, and it's a big advantage. So let me talk about the offerings actually that are available today in AWS. So we have on the left what we call Amazon's FSx for NetApp ONTAP. This is a truly first-party service. So if you're an Amazon customer today and you're familiar with your console, you can go right in 30 minutes and provision enterprise storage in Amazon on the fly. And you can be very specific. You can tune it for high performance. You can tune it for capacity. One of the big advantages of the FSx service is it's by nature a two-tier service, which essentially means that you're getting the performance you need when you need it, but you're not overpaying for performance that you're not using. So the system automatically moves data from a performance tier to a capacity tier on the fly based on the activity of the data set. And that goes a long way to reducing cost and increasing efficiency. The other big definition here is it's a fully managed service by AWS, meaning you're not concerned about updating OSs, you're not concerned about doing patches, you're not responsible for the underlying hardware. All of those things are handled and managed for you, which for folks that aren't storage administrators goes a long way. It means that you can have a very common set of capabilities across the staff and still be able to manage enterprise storage in the cloud. The other big one I'll just call out, and the last one on the FSx, is the ability, which is unique to AWS service, to utilize, like we talked about, we've got these efficiency built into the platform. we're very able to seamlessly move data from on-prem into the cloud in an efficient manner, and Cirrus actually helps us do that even better. But that's a big differentiator of the FSx service compared to some of the other offerings that are out there. Now, for folks that are much more proficient in ONTAP, as an example, we also offer an offering called Cloud Volumes ONTAP. That's essentially the ability for you to create an ONTAP environment in AWS on your own, spin up the EC2 instances, spin up some storage volumes, spin up an object volume or object bucket, if you will, and be able to manage that data as if you were running an on-prem hardware solution, except in the cloud. So in that situation, you've got full control of the OS version. You're responsible for all the updates and management. But for some of our customers that are heavily invested in us, we've been in the business for over 30 years, and we have a very large piece of the on-prem file and block storage market. Those customers often feel very comfortable being able to take their expertise and move it straight into AWS. So whichever model is better or whichever suits the use case, we've got both options out there. So just a little bit about use cases specifically, and I think today we're going to focus mostly on what I consider to be table stakes enterprise workloads, right? So this is often databases like Oracle and SQL. It's the ability to have high performance block storage in the cloud. That's a big piece of what FSx offers, as well as CVO. We're also very good though in file shares and just generic file storage, home directories, VDI profiles, all those things. So you'll find a lot of customers enjoying the benefits of both, since the service can accommodate both workloads simultaneously, less management points, less things to think about. The other biggie is a lot of folks take on-prem data, if it's in a virtual environment even, and have a desire to have a protected copy in the cloud, whether it's file data or maybe a secondary failover environment. So cyber resiliency and data protection is a big deal for us as well. And lastly, we just announced at VM's Explore conference a couple of weeks ago, our new partnership with VMC, VMware Cloud on AWS, which basically allows you to use FSxN as a data store for your virtual machines and virtual infrastructure, which drastically improves efficiency and lowers cost. So we'll be doing some subsequent webinars on that subject if that's interesting to you folks as well. Big announcement for us recently. So I'll just kind of finish up here with kind of one example, and this kind of fits back to it's important to have storage efficiency because the cost is reduced, but it's even more important and more impactful to have productivity increased with some of the feature set that we bring to the table. So we have a US hotel chain, a very common name. You would recognize them. They were able to move their entirety of their Oracle test and dev environment into FSx NetApp ONTAP. Because mostly they were interested in having those clones that they could create on the fly. Gives them the ability to replicate that Oracle environment, test some new code against it, validate it, spin it down, spin it up on the fly. Took hours in the past using more what I would consider to be cloud native storage technology, down to seconds with our FlexClone capability. So instead of having 100 developers waiting, there's 100 developers working, and that just makes a huge difference in terms of their productivity. The other big piece was that the FSxN offering is highly performant. It's suitable for databases. It's certified for things like SAP HANA. So they were able to achieve under 1 millisecond latency on those storage volumes in the cloud, which really met the use case as well. So not only efficiency from a storage perspective, efficiency from a staff perspective, but also the performance that was required and delivered by the service. And so with that, I think the key takeaways here that I really wanted to summarize on, this is true enterprise storage, natively consumable in AWS, and it comes with all the value that we just talked about. Productivity is a huge piece, as well as storage efficiency. And with the power of Amazon being the #1 cloud provider, there's literally millions of subscribers that can turn on the value of ONTAP in under a half hour using FSx for NetApp ONTAP. So summarizing there, I'm going to turn it over to Mark. Really, again, appreciate everybody joining, and love to answer any questions or do any follow-up as we need to. Mark, I think you're on mute.
Oops.
If I can spec. Well, Eric, you're very humble in your description of what FSxN and Cloud Volume ONTAP is. For customers who are in the business of storage management, we all know what kind of capabilities are available on-prem, and ONTAP certainly has a very storied history in the ONTAP marketplace. We have been in the marketplace for about 10 years as a company, and we're about taking advantage and getting the most out of your cloud storage. And what Eric has pointed out is what I think is a groundbreaking kind of capability with FSxN and Cloud Volume ONTAP. This is a very unique opportunity, and I'd like everybody to kind of just think for a second, what workloads would I have that I would want to bring and try out in the cloud? I mean, if you're in, I have this moniker of tech refresh to the cloud. If you're in a situation today where you have a block array that you're looking at, what am I going to do with this block array? It's a little long in the tooth. It's 4 to 5 years old. Do I actually reinvest and buy another array for on-prem, or do I actually take the leap and move some of that workload to the cloud? And if I'm going to move it to the cloud, am I going to move it and then back up the clock to a time when you didn't have thin dedupe, compress, and enterprise snapshots? And the answer is you probably wouldn't, but you don't have to. With the offering of FSxN and CVO, you have the opportunity to take that leap, and with confidence of performance and cost efficiency of doing that in the cloud. If you buy a new array today, that means you're going to vet it out over the next 5 years. So in 2028, that workload will still be running on-prem. So it's a very interesting time to be thinking about this. So for those customers who have workloads that you think are ready for a lift and shift, this is the time to do it. And what does Cirrus Data do? We make that journey as seamless as possible. So Cirrus Data, a little bit about us. We're a private company. We got started in 2011. We're a global company headquartered in America. We work with the who's who in the industry. Our technology itself is patented. We have 12 unique patents about data movement and getting into the data stream non-disruptively. We're all about non-disruptive work. We've got partnerships across the cloud industry. So we work with AWS, we work with Azure, Google Cloud Platform, and any of the MSPs that are out there. We've got partnerships across the storage industry. And why that matters in a network appliance kind of context, that means these all can be donors. So if you look at Dell or Infinidat, Hewlett Packard, Fujitsu, Pure Storage, those can be sources for things that are going to go directly into Cloud Volume ONTAP or FSxN. Our portfolio is actually based on two different schemas. One is an appliance-based schema where we ship in appliances and use that. So we have Cirrus Migrate on-prem. We can move local and remote and to the cloud using appliances. We also have protection, so we can do multi-vendor replication. We can do data protection from one platform to another. We've modified that on-prem appliance-based solution to do software as a service solution. So we have something called Cirrus Migrate Cloud, and Cirrus Migrate Cloud, as the name implies, moves data from on-prem to the cloud, from tier to tier in the cloud, and also from cloud to cloud. Because it's based on our appliance-based program, we can also do moves that are local and remote. So if you wanted to do some local migrations, as long as it's Windows and Linux, we can move you using agents, no hardware deployed, non-disruptive to your applications, and get you where you need to be. We've also adopted our data protection schema to the cloud, but that's a topic for another day. At the core of everything that we do is our key patent called Transparent Datapath Intercept. That allows us to get into the data stream non-disruptively. When we're using appliances, we do that in the fiber channel and iSCSI pathways. When we're doing CMC, or Cirrus Migrate Cloud, we actually do it in the data path of the SCSI driver inside the host itself. That allows us to do meaningful work. And obviously, data migration is a big piece of that meaningful work. We enable non-disruptive migration and or replication to and from any local or remote or cloud storage. So we can pick you up from where you are, move you to a new location non-disruptively, and then the only time that there's any downtime, if at all, would be during cutovers. We also have the ability to do continuous data protection. We create a journal of all your I/O, and from that journal, we can facilitate granular recovery. We also support copy data management. That is a vendor neutral copy data management. I can make snapshots instantly available from one vendor to another, from one platform to another. Key to everything that we do is simple and transparent deployment. No impact to production. We get into the data path non-disruptively. We move non-disruptively. We have a technology called Intelligent Quality of Service. And what it does is that it respects the I/O of the source LUNs. So when the source LUNs get busy, we back off so that there's no impact to production while we're moving things. This intelligent quality of service enables us to get the migration done much sooner than other methods and with no application impact. Our Intercept choices are appliances, virtual appliances, agents. We even have the ability to do archive to file shares in S3 objects in our data protection suite. Fundamentally, we're enabling you, and the conversation that matters here is cloud migration to Cloud Volume ONTAP or FSxN from any source. So let's look at Cirrus Migrate Cloud. Very interestingly, I've been in the storage industry for more than 30 years, and we talk about storage modernization on-prem. We're going to go from a hybrid array to an all-flash array. We're going to do digital transformation, whatever. But we actually have the opportunity now to do cloud storage modernization. The AWS and Azure and Google Cloud Platform have been out, and it's actually time to do modernization of that platform for efficiency and performance. So if we look at what limits us from doing that, I've coined a term from Ian Foster that he called data friction. That is the interference in getting the information from where it lives to where I want it to go and make it thrive. So let's look at the benefits you get from Cirrus Migrate Cloud. Some of these benefits are from us, and some of them are from CVO and FSxN. So first and foremost, we move cost effectively to the cloud. We reduce the time and telco burden, because what we do is we, in flight, before it leaves the data center or before it leaves the cloud, we reduce by doing de-zeroing and compression. And that reduces the amount of data we're actually moving by 8 or 10-fold. We allow ourselves to arrive on a data reduced format like CVO or FSxN. We minimize application downtime for the transition. So we're actually moving the data while the data is in use on-prem or in another cloud. And that means that the only time we have downtime is when we actually transition from the on-prem resource to the in-cloud resource. Seconds to minutes of downtime instead of hours to days of downtime. Move from thick cloud volumes to thin, deduped, compressed. Eric kind of described this as, kind of what you get with enterprise arrays. Well, uniquely, this is something that you can get from NetApp. The idea that you want to use EBS or managed disk, these are, disk drives, these disk drive formats from the late 80s. They're clones, they're thickly provisioned, you pay for everything. They're not very elegant in their implementation. And, you can get an 8-to-1 data reduction pretty straightforward. You also have the ability to get enterprise features like snapshots, replicates, or clones. As Eric pointed out, these are critical in terms of productivity. I did a study with the evaluator group in the spring of 2021, and in that they highlighted to us the fact that these cloud storage units that you get out there are very clunky, and without snapshots, if you wanted to make a snapshot in the cloud, and AWS calls it a snapshot, but what it really is a clone. I've got a terabyte, I want to make a snapshot, it's going to take a half an hour, and if I've got 30 of them to make, you're going to be spending the entire day making your snapshots. The other issue that you get to is when you make a snapshot in AWS, it actually charges you for a clone. So it's not I'm just paying the time price, I'm actually paying the storage price associated with that clone. And what does that lead to? That leads to unpredictable monthly bills. I get my EBS bill one month and I've had 3 snapshots, so I've got 3x what I expect. The next month I have 5, and it gets worse. So you want to be able to move to enterprise features that enable what you get on-prem today in the cloud. So let's look at CMC use cases for typical customers. So again, I look at people who are using block storage on-prem today. So we can pick up from anything on-prem that's block storage and move you directly to CVO or FSxN. We can move internal storage. I have a customer who's asking me if I can use a SCSI array that they have hard connected to their environment, and the answer is yes. If the host sees a block storage, we can move it directly to Cloud Volume ONTAP or FSxN. And when we do that move, it is data reduced, it is compressed, and it is encrypted. So you are time efficient, you are telco efficient, and you're secure. There's another interesting use case, which is to go between tiers. And in this particular case, we were actually approached by Microsoft Azure to get to their ultra tier, but you could indeed take, if I'm deployed today in EBS, I could literally move an EBS workload from where they are today to FSxN or CVO with zero downtime and zero application impact. That is the ability to move from one tier of storage to a new tier called the Smart Tier, NetApp, Cloud Volume ONTAP, or FSxN with zero downtime. And the last one, of course, is to move from one of the cloud vendors into another cloud vendor with FSxN or Cloud Volume ONTAP. Let's look at this in a little bit more detail. So first and foremost, what is Cirrus Migrate Cloud? But it is a cloud as a service application where you log into a cloud portal, you create a project to move some capacity from one data center to the cloud. And when I create that project, it downloads the agents that are necessary to my data center instance, where the agents themselves self-install, discover the underlying disks that are there. We point the cloud at the destination, and let's say it's FSxN, and that agent creates the volumes that are necessary for the migration, and then they are mapped to each other, and we actually do Cirrus Migrate Cloud, where we go and do data reduction, D0 and compression, and encryption in flight, and we Cirrus Migrate Cloud that data while I'm running on-prem with no application impact to that on-prem workload. Once we get to the point where we are tracking changes, this is an asynchronous process, so I move, we move data in a dirty block kind of environment. Once those are just into tracking changes, I have the ability then to leverage another unique technology that we call cMotion. I'm running a SQL application in a Docker container, on Fiber Channel block. I want to move that. I want to test that in the cloud. So what do? I do a cMotion over to that FSxN volume. And what's happening is my Microsoft SQL application is actually using the disk in the cloud. Once I've done that and I've synchronized that data and have it running in the cloud, I now take a flex clone. I create a flex clone up in the cloud. I revert back on-prem. Now I have the ability in AWS to mount that flex clone to any server that I want, to an instance in the cloud. I test out to my heart's content TCP IP addresses, load balancing, any kinds of patches that are necessary for Linux or Windows or whatever I'm going to be running in there. And then I'm running my application as before. I'm continuing just to move the dirty pages in an asynchronous fashion, but I've decided that I'm happy to run in the cloud now. Now what we need to do is we need to stop what's running on the data center and run our application in the cloud. So what do? We go into cMotion mode that synchronizes the data between the two. I shut down my application on-prem. I start it up in AWS, and that transition is seconds to minutes. And now my application is successfully running in the cloud. This gives you the ability to get your application to the cloud, knowing, in fact, everything is going to go well during that transition. Yes, we'll do it in an off hours time. We'll do it with minimum disruption, but no, I'm not going to be taking a big gulp of air, hoping that things are going to go right, because I'm going to know that when I get there, it's going to execute well. The next migration is going to be between tiers in the cloud. So let's say I'm running on standard disk and I want to try out Cloud Volume ONTAP. Well, I'm running a PostgreSQL database, and what do? We log into the cloud portal. We point the cloud portal at that instance in Azure. We load our code there. It discovers our standard disk. It creates our Cloud Volume ONTAP volumes for us. And we start migrating the data from the SSD over to CVO or FSxN. We then CMotion over the data itself. And in CMotioning over, what I've done is I've essentially flipped the IO switch from standard disk over to Cloud Volume ONTAP while the Postgres database is running. No application impact, no application downtime. If I'm satisfied, I do a final cutover and I'm done. If I've decided that I want to revert back for a while and tell people I'm actually doing this, I can actually flip it over and flip it back to my standard disk. So this gives me the ability to test without impact, move it over there and validate the value of going over to Cloud Volume ONTAP or FSxN with no application impact and no downtime. The final kind of tough environment to do would be, let's say I'm running in Microsoft Azure and I've decided I want to run in FSxN and AWS. So again, I've got an application running in a container. I log into my portal. I point the portal at my Azure instance. I discover the managed disks that are with that environment. I do the same thing. I download the code to AWS. The code itself self-installs and creates an FSxN volumes that are necessary for the migration. And then I do a data migration. And again, it's data reduced. So we're doing dezeroing and compression, which means my egress fees out of Microsoft Azure are minimized. It also means that my time to go from Azure to AWS is minimized. We secure it with AES encryption, and we migrate the data asynchronously while my application is running just fine on Microsoft Azure. Eventually, we're going to do the same kind of CMotion where my application is going to stay in Azure, but I'm going to instantiate a flex clone over on FSxN. Once it's created, I revert back. Now I do all my testing to do whatever is necessary to make my code work well in AWS. And then I'm going to go through the same process. Synchronize with CMotion, shut down the application in Microsoft Azure, start it up in AWS. And again, seconds to minutes of downtime. My application has moved from a thick and old infrastructure over at Microsoft Azure to a thin, deduped, compressed architecture with all the enterprise features in AWS, lowering my monthly cost and extending my enterprise features in a very, very positive way. So the benefits of Cloud Volume ONTAP is just a recap of what Eric had said: reduce the cost of cloud storage. And again, he's not highlighting that as the number one, highlighting also the advantages in terms of personnel efficiency, not even in here, but reduce the cost with thin, dedupe, and compression. That certainly is something you can go back and tell the CFO. Predictable lower monthly costs. That means when I'm making a snapshot, I'm not getting an incremental bill for every snapshot. And you get to retain and enhance best practices. Create as many snapshots as you like. Do whatever you want to do in that environment without impacting things. You get those enterprise services in your FSxN Cloud Volume ONTAP. You've got no cloud vendor lock-in. If you wanted to move from AWS to GCP, you certainly could, and all of your automation would go with you as Cloud Volume ONTAP automation. All we do is get you there. Cirrus Migrate Cloud, it gets you to the Cloud Volume ONTAP FSxN volume benefits. So if you look at what we create, when we create this thing, we have a project portal. It goes off and looks for the hosts. It self-installs the agents there. It creates a migration session. Once that session is created, it runs in the background until that is in tracking changes mode. And then we can see that we're, essentially fully automated. You don't have to do much. You just have to point the environment at your instance. It discovers the ones that are there. We create the volumes, and then we're ready for a transparent migration, minimal application impact. And we've tested this out to 1,000 concurrent sessions. So obviously we can do things in parallel that are very, very powerful. We can move your workload to the cloud very, very effectively. CMotion is cloud agnostic, non-disruptive, and enterprise scale. Cirrus Migrate Cloud is storage agnostic. I can come from any block resource to any cloud destination with one simple tool. It doesn't vary by source. You can come from any existing vendor to get you there. Data reduce traffic, reduce the customer's telco burden, reduce the time it takes. We have a white paper that we can share called Turbocharge Your Cloud Migration. We've benchmarked ourselves against AWS Cloud Endure, Microsoft Azure Migrate. We're 4 to 6 times faster than those environments. So we have great advantage over those. And this is enabling you to move those on-prem applications to the cloud. As an example, I got this from a webinar that I did with Randy Siemens with AWS to give you a sense of what kind of benefits. If I moved from EBS and I went to FSxN, you're looking at a monthly cost going from $14,000 down to $4,400. In another workload they were showing, it was going from $25,000 a month. This was a 100 terabyte environment down to $6,300 a month. And you know, from my perspective, the only question is, how do I make this happen? Well, you make this happen with Cirrus. We help you move from that EBS environment over to FSxN or CVO, get the benefits of thin dedupe compression, enterprise snapshots, and get that today. So with that call to action, get started with FSxN today. A 50%, maybe 70% reduction in storage, enhanced enterprise features. You know, these are going to improve staff productivity dramatically. We've got a free trial of Cirrus Migrate Cloud, and we can migrate non-disruptively to FSxN from EBS. And with that, I'm going to open it up to questions and answers.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Eric and Mark, for that. It was really terrific. We have a lot of questions coming in through different channels here. So I'm going to do rapid fire. So one of our questions, I'm going to do some of the Q&As first. So this question, Mark, is for you. It says, thanks, CMotion looks awesome. Does this support Windows only, or do you support Linux OS also?
Yes, we support Windows and Linux with the code. And it depends. You know, we support all the major versions Linux of SUSE, Red Hat, CentOS, etc. So we are fully supporting the Linux environment.
Okay, great. So Eric, I think this one is for you. Is FSxN, that's a little bit of a tongue twister sometimes, solution working with Cirrus predominantly targeted at small, medium, or large customer environments, or can it accommodate all?
Yeah, so the nice thing and the granularity of FSxN is you can start as small as 1 terabyte, which could be just a way to pilot a project for a large customer, or it could be a substantial workload maybe for a small customer. It's funny though, we see customers that have a couple of employees and petabytes of data, so it's always hard to pinpoint one, but I think the answer is it fits pretty much all the way across the board. And the nice thing too on the granularity is you can really be specific on where you really need performance and where you may just really need more capacity, and not be thinking about it like managing a big array where you're trying to break it into little pieces. You can actually create lots of little arrays, which makes it very specific to certain use cases. So any and all customer sizes is the answer.
Great. So I have this question a couple different times, Eric and Mark, but who do they reach out to if they have more questions or want to talk more about starting a trial or program?
Okay, so for us, the link is in the presentation, but it's also available on our website. So you can go to our website under resources, and you can find our link to a free trial. We are also you can go and ask us to contact you. So you can go to our website and just reach out and contact us, and we'll connect you with the local salesperson who can take care of you.
Eric, how about for NetApp and actually AWS? Somebody was wondering.
Sure. So our team is happy to connect the dots. If you have a relationship with NetApp today and you know your NetApp team, they know where to find our specialist organizations. We have specialists that focus all the way from commercial into strategic accounts and global accounts. And we'd be happy to work together with our AWS partners in getting a solution together. But I do think Cirrus really helps us from a driving the conversation forward perspective. So working it through them is a great option as well.
Great, thank you. Okay, so Mark, with Cirrus Migrate Cloud, do I manage all of the hosts, VMs, instances separately, or are they managed via a management platform?
So each instance is managed separately. We can we install in each instance, and each instance runs in parallel. So you can start and stop different instances at different times and work it from that perspective.
Okay, and then somebody has a question about how to do the trials. How do they find out more information about trials? If we've answered the question for Cirrus, is there a trial for NetApp, Eric, as well?
Absolutely. For anyone who's interested in either trying CVO, there's a 30-day trial offer that's on our website. We can post that as a follow-up link. And AWS is also more than willing to help customers build pilot projects or proof of concepts with FSxN. And you can work that through your storage team in AWS. So either way, we'll get a link as a follow-up.
Okay, just a reminder, if you have a question, do me a favor and put it in the Q&A. I'm kind of trying to juggle questions here. If I don't get to it, I will come back to it. We're probably going to take maybe one or two more. There's a question coming in from LinkedIn about, Mark, how much faster Cirrus Migrate Cloud is versus a free option from the cloud
Yeah,
provider.
so I briefly mentioned that the data reduction enables us to go 4 to 6 times faster than, say, a Cloud Endure or Microsoft Azure Migrate. So there are free tools, and the challenge there is when you start measuring a decent amount of storage, say 100 terabytes, you're talking the difference between 6 to 9 months on a free tool or under a month using the Cirrus tool. So it can be quite substantial in terms of both the amount of bandwidth that's consumed as well as the time it takes you to get your instance into the cloud.
Great. And I think we're going to end on maybe a softball here. How is it priced? And this question goes to both Eric and Mark.
Okay, so ours is priced in one of two ways. We either do it on a host-based prices, that is per instance, there's a charge per instance, or there's a capacity base. So I've got 100 instances and they take 10 terabytes. I want to buy a 10 terabyte license. You can have that. It has no time factor. If I go and say I want to buy 100 hosts, there's a 2 terabyte limit per host, and it's a 60-day license. So those are the two ways that you buy our licenses. We are in the marketplace, so you can buy it there, or you can work with our sales team, and we'd be more than happy to provide a customized quote for any environment.
Great. And from the ONTAP perspective, for Cloud Volumes, ONTAP, it is a capacity-based license that's procurable through Marketplace as well. And for FSxN, you're provisioning a capacity-based license right through your portal, specifically focused on how much performance you really need from a provision capacity perspective. And then the system will automatically grow capacity behind the scenes elastically at a very low cost. And there's some calculators out there that are really helpful to give you a sense. If I have a 100 terabyte workload and 20% is performant, what's that going to look like? You can build that out right off the AWS website.
Great. Thank you both. So I know we ran a little bit over today. I want to thank everybody for joining us today, whether you were on this Zoom call on LinkedIn. I guess we had someone on YouTube, some folks on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Thank you all for joining us. If I didn't get to your question, we will come back to you individually and follow up. If you need anything, feel free to reach out to us. All of our information is available on our website, cirrusdata.com.